The world won't understand you. Hey, but it's okay. Said the world won't understand you. Cause I made you in my own way. Said the world won't understand you. Cause I made you different.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 72 of In a Good Way podcast. Today's special guest is Loreli Drache. She is a divine conduit and remembrance guide. She is also an NDE experiencer. Plus, she has many other abilities, and it's an honor to have you here, Loreli. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Omar. I appreciate it. I'm so excited to have a talk with you today.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, I've known you for a little bit, but I haven't been able to dive that deep into your story. So that's especially why I'm very honored to have you here, because I want to hear your story. So, you know, I always like to start with my guests in the beginning. And so, of course, I want to ask, when you were little, were you already experiencing anything? Or did it start after your first NDE? Because you have had a few NDEs. So did it start after your or were you already getting it from a young age?
You know, my youngest memory is my mother, like, always saying I was an old soul. Like, you couldn't tell me anything. I already knew. But my first NDE was at 7. So that kind of throws everything off because, my whole childhood was being in that state of consciousness. So,
Wow.
yeah, I had a drowning experience at age 7. So,
Wow.
yeah. And I grew up Catholic, but loosely. Do you know what I mean? The German Catholic. And because I always find that it's interesting. People always go like, what was your basis as far as how your experiences played out? But yeah, and I remember coming back from my NDE going to my mom, I'm supposed to be a priest. And she's like, you can't be a priest in our religion, honey. I said, well, then it's not for me. Nature's my church, Mom. I'm going into the woods. And she just laughed, but she never made me go back to church afterwards.
Oh, wow. Wow. So
Yeah.
real quick, so
Mhm.
with the drowning, how did that happen? If you don't mind me asking, how, like, what?
That's okay. Well, my aunt and uncle came over. They lived across the street. We lived on 191 acre farm.
Oh,
It
wow.
used to be a quarry, so we had a lot of ponds.
Mm.
And we had a big one that was like the swimming pond where they built out a pier out of pallets and such, but it was connected often because of the water table, to the smaller pond next to it where the bluegills spawned. So my brother asked my aunt and uncle to go down there while my mom was cooking supper, and of course, to get me out from underfoot, she's like, take your sister with you. So and it was it's about a mile walk back there, and there's 2 entrances. So they went to the where the bluegills spawned, and my aunt took me down to the other end because that's where the swimming pier is, because I like to look in the water. And there was a smaller pond next to it where all the literally it was like a frog factory. That's where they all went to for their tadpoles. So I love to go to that section. So I went out to the end of the pier looking, and it was like late afternoon. So the way the light was hitting the water was kind of mesmerizing. So I
Mm.
got a little dizzy, and so then I went to the other side. Well, my aunt kind of had separation anxiety. She didn't like being away from my uncle. That was just normal, right? So she's like, I'm gonna go check on him. Are you gonna
Mm.
be okay? Here I am, 7 years old. Oh yeah,
Wow.
fine. But you have to also remember we were farm people. You have a lot of responsibility at a young age, right? Um, so it's a little different. So, but as soon as she left, the next thing I know, this is the weirdest thing. It's like I blanked out. The next thing I knew was my body was feet first sinking in the water, that I became aware of it. And then as the bubbles started coming up, because I realized I was screaming,
Wow.
I realized that's my air. I'm going to die. And so as soon as I said that, I was out of body
Oh.
uh, and watching it sink.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but this is the interesting part that not a lot of people necessarily get. But as soon as I had left my body, I started to connect to the consciousness of everybody around
Mm.
me. So I heard my brother's thoughts because they obviously heard me fall in. They heard my aunt scream. She's trying to get to me. But I heard my brother's thoughts. If he could swim to me faster or run to save me, because if he could swim across that pond or run. And I remember laughing, going, "You can't do either." You know what I mean? I'm sitting here, because it was still my consciousness. I hadn't like, left the thing. And my uncle and aunt were both, panicking, like how this happened. It's gonna be our fault, that kind of stuff. And my aunt was the last one in my circle right there, that I connected to. And, she didn't know how to swim either. So she's trying to figure out what she can hang on to, how she can get to me because she's closest, so
Mm.
all those thoughts. And then I went what felt like farther up, like way up. And then I could see my mom, the mile back at the farmhouse cooking dinner, and she's wondering if we found anything or if we caught anything or when we'd be back. Um, and so as soon as I knew she was okay, then next thing I know, I was just gone. I was in this place. Um, it just seemed like kind of like clouds,
Mm.
with the brightest light you'd ever see, 1,000 LEDs. And I could tell, I could sense there was somebody with me, like off to my left, and and we were like looking up at this, like it looked like an archway. Um, and this being was coming through, but it emanated so much light you just couldn't even make out anything as it approached. Um, and I remember having this parts of the conversation. I just remember them telling me, I was supposed to go back. And it felt like eons because here I am arguing. I mean, I literally felt like I was there years going, there's no way you can make me go back to that. Nope, I'm not going. Nope, I'm
Oh,
not going.
wow.
Yeah.
So let me ask real quick, when you were
Uh-huh.
there, did you still
Mhm.
have like the mind of a 7-year-old, or you were already like this very
Well,
aware being?
that's the interesting thing. Like, I really can't say. Like, I still have the petulance, the stubbornness of what you
Yeah.
would call a 7-year-old because here I am arguing with
Yeah,
these
that's why
beings.
I asked. That's why I asked. Yeah,
But as my soul self, I have found I am that way, so I can't
yeah. Oh.
really say. But, so I'm not sure on that aspect, because like, I don't feel like in that one, like, I knew everything.
Mm.
It came to me bits and pieces after, but I just felt this amazing love that it's ineffable, I guess you would say. It's like a parental love times a zillion. I say terms like that, but that's the closest I can get you to that kind of love and peace. And that's mostly what I remember from that experience. I don't remember like an expanded consciousness, just that I didn't have a body and I felt one with everything, but I didn't have this expansive thing that I recall. But I'm pretty sure, like, I have this feeling like I saw what I was supposed to go back to, like, and things have trickled through since then, and like even coming back saying I wanted to be a priest, like I knew um there was something to that I was supposed to teach, the ways,
Mm.
but not the Bible ways. I come to find out, but so there was a lot to that, but and I did have a very traumatic life. It was like my whole timeline switched when I came back as far as how my
Really?
family was to me, everything. But the funny part is like I was arguing, like I said, what felt like lifetimes, but then there was this deep male voice, and it just felt like it was in my head, yet all around me, and it echoed so freaking loud, like authoritative, like it reminded me of like Zeus. But of course, people would say God or whatever, but it was just, he's like, you must go back, you have more to do. And I was just like, oh, but that I was still like, yeah. So
That's
I
amazing.
literally went back to my body after that, but I wouldn't get in it. Like I was like I could see my body laying there. They had brought it up and laid it on up on the because it was kind of a steep embankment to go down there. So they laid it on the top of the embankment. And I had no ill effects, like I didn't see any water in my lungs or anything, but they laid me there. Um, but it's like I swear for a year it felt like I wasn't in my body. Like I was with it. Okay, you can make me go back here, but you can't make me do this.
Wow.
I'm very petulant. I was always very stubborn. So it's taken me a long time to surrender to the divine flow. Let's just put it that way. But and I don't think I talked till the next day. I'm pretty sure because I remember they were concerned about me. Like they could see I was physically fine, but I just wouldn't speak. And when I did, that's when I told my brother. I was like, "Why are you thinking that?" And I told my mom, "I died." Which my family had had a lot of different weird experiences, so they didn't question that, especially when I was telling them what they were thinking. I mean, they're like, "Oh, yeah, no."
Oh, you could hear it once. Oh, during you told them what they were thinking
while
during.
my body was
Wow.
underwater. Yeah, the fact that I knew what they were thinking and
Mm.
doing back at home and everything else, they didn't question it. They knew something had happened. But then I didn't know nothing about near death experiences. I didn't even really learn about that till a few years ago, like that it
Mm.
was a term or what it was, or I just knew I died. It was just natural to me. I was a kid. Yeah. So.
Wow.
But
Okay.
that's when I started having the prophetic dreams.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
could tell when souls were preparing to leave their body, like they would look like wax dummies. It was kind of scary as a child, and then I felt responsible, because it was always like 2 weeks before they passed when I started to see that, or I'd sense things like as I got older, but I couldn't save people, and then it's like, well, if I would have tried hard enough, but it got where I knew enough things and had enough prophetic dreams. My family listened to me. Like my sister once didn't take a flight with her fiance because I just had a bad feeling. I knew there was something playing out. It just didn't mean the plane was going to crash, but it just they shouldn't go, and they didn't. I was really shocked. They're like, "No, you've been right enough. We're not risking it."
Wow.
So I had a supportive family, unlike some, that have gone through, but it also alienated me. Like, you were the mailman's kid. You weren't right. They were hunters and sportsmen, and not that there's anything wrong with that, but and they were big partiers and drinkers, and just the way they were about people and things and everything else. Like, I came back as this pure love, and
Mm.
I didn't know how to assimilate at all. And like I said, there wasn't books, there wasn't people that I was aware of. I didn't know how to fit.
Mm. No, I yeah, I
Kids at
understand.
school would be like, "You're weird, but in a good way." Like
Mm.
nobody knew how to take me, and I didn't know how to be any different. You know. Yeah.
Wow. So you were experiencing this throughout elementary, junior high, high school even, and then
Yeah.
you already had all these abilities. And then when did well, I guess from there, how did your life go until your next NDE, or what happened?
Well, there was a lot of childhood trauma
Mm.
in the case of like verbal abuse, sibling abuse, and being locked in the basement,
Wow.
just chased, just a lot of things that led to a lot of soul trauma, and I think that's what led to my other experiences and things. When we don't heal those things, they come through our energetic bodies and produce themselves in a very physical way. So by the time I was like 15, I started having things where like half my body would go numb and I'd be
Oh.
dizzy and all this stuff. They thought maybe I had a brain tumor. I had a few incidents, with a head injury and stuff. So they didn't know what was wrong with me. And so I had all these tests and even a psychology exam because they couldn't get to the bottom of what was going on with me. Um, I think that was later in my 20s. Of course, I was diagnosed sane. They said I was just had stress syndrome from an underlying illness that the doctors couldn't figure out. That's before like fibromyalgia and things like that were diagnosable.
Mm.
So I eventually, like, I think at 28 got diagnosed with that.
Mm.
And some other things, so I racked up because, okay, this is why I think NDE integration is so important, or to learn these steps. I was wide open. When you have an NDE, your soul blows out one of your chakras, right? So I was this wide open sponge, especially where I was empath. And, I remember even bringing a kitten back to life when I was a kid, for real.
Ah.
Anyway, and things like that I just didn't think nothing of. So like I always wanted to heal everyone, and I even went into the medical field, and so I was a sponging. Like there was tons of things I had symptoms of, but medically there was no backup for it. I mean, a few of them were backed up medically by tests and bone scans and everything else, but like I was by the time I was like 28, I think I had like 16 autoimmune diagnosis or comorbidities and different
Wow.
things, like I shouldn't be functioning kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I remember my doctor when I was like 18 or 20 is like, you have the body of a 91-year-old. What is going on with you? I mean, as far as like symptomatic and degeneration already and all this
Yeah.
stuff. Um, so I mean, physically and emotionally, I had gone through a lot. And I find sometimes that is the case to break break open an empath and all of these things, right? It's part of the creation story,
Mm.
and I don't talk about it very often, because I was always very prideful, and I was very much raised like, you don't talk about these things. You protect your family name. This stuff doesn't go on behind closed doors. That whole mentality of, 80s parenting, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
So there was just a lot of things and a lot of exposure, but it created who I am. Some people might carry that forward in a victim mentality, and maybe for a while I did, until I understood what made and break me, and why I chose those things, and to experience those things. But it was literally like my life changed overnight. Like, I jumped into a new timeline. Like, who are these people? They treated me totally different. It was very bizarre.
Wow.
And I don't know, from my understanding, I think part of it is, you come back such a high vibration, and then so you create this static because, okay, when you're standing in front of such a being of light, even as I was as a child, which I hadn't really racked up anything to feel guilty of, right?
Mm.
But you still feel small and unworthy and being judged, even though you weren't judged. You were, as long as you're putting love into the world, there's no judgment, right? But so I think that level of light and the intensity and the fact that, like, I could always see both sides of the story drove them. They always wanted to judge or talk behind people's back. And I'm like, they're just doing this because of this. They're like, how do you know that? I'm like, I just know. Like, I could see their wounds. So I knew why they behaved the way they did.
Mm.
Um, so I just feel like the understanding I got later was like, my energy just made them feel judged in that sense. I was always like, I don't even like the term the devil's advocate when it came to like defending things or understanding things. That was the term they used back then. Now I know way too much about the power of words. I don't like to say those, but yeah. So I became, I think I graduated, I became a medical assistant. I graduated in 94, I believe. And so then I went to work in urgent care and occupational medicine.
Mm.
The only reason I'm bringing this up is because that's when I started to see some of the medical intuitive abilities that I have.
Oh.
and but I didn't recognize them as that back then. Like, I remember there was this young girl, and I checked her in, and I talked to her, and I came back out. She's only like 5. I told the doctor, I said, it's her appendix. And he looked at me like, yeah, whatever, And he went in there and he's like, oh my God. He comes back out. He was white and his jaw down. He's like, I would have missed that. How did you know? I said, I just do.
Wow.
And,
They didn't know you had these abilities?
right. I didn't even, I just,
Oh, okay.
in that sense, like, I was intuitive, I had some different things, that they came and went in strength as far as my clairs till later in life. Like, they were strongest when I needed something, it was mostly, like I said, prophetic dreams and just knowing.
Mm.
Um, so it was just, so that was the first time that I remember, like, truly knowing it. Before, I would just dismiss these feelings, and I'm like, okay. And that story always gets me because this is very important with healthcare. Like, um, our doctors were what you call like contract doctors. And so was the ER in our town. So we had to send her up to the ER because we were only the urgent care. They had a rivalry. So that doctor sent her home, said she had a tummy ache.
Wow.
And it ruptured and she had to be rushed into but everything turned out okay. But that's where ego comes in, so that's what, between them, and it really taught me a lesson, like, never to, like, be that way, as far as holding ego and, like, and things like that. So that was a valuable lesson in that whole scenario, because I was like, why did it play out that way? Why was I told this yet for her to still go through all that? You know what I mean? Um, So, but then the reason I'm talking about this in the medical field is it got to be where literally I was taking on all these people's symptoms. They say, I feel so much better. I don't even think I need to see the doctor,
Mm.
after I would talk to them. And so it was kind of funny that way. But so I was stacking them on, and it got to the point where my immune system literally was crashing. And they had to put me on so much prednisone and stuff that my body flipped up. My face turned like a pancake. My eyes were just split. My skin
Wow.
ripped. My skin ripped open, like literally ripped. and it was so painful, and I didn't know what was going on with me. And while I was on leave is when I finally got pregnant after years, probably the stress of not being at work. And that leads into my second NDE.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, and so a lot of things changed after that. I uh I had a visitation from my grandmother, telling me that I was going to lose this baby. It wasn't mine to keep, but there would be more and not to be afraid.
Mm.
And and she showed me a date on the calendar and me sitting in the clinic. And well, sure enough, that date I started spotting bleeding out. They rushed me to the ER. Um, and they said I need an emergency DNC. Well, I'd never had any type of surgeries before, and they weren't familiar with me. They gave me too much anesthesia. I started bleeding out because I guess I run anemic. Um, and I had to be incubated. He said they almost lost me. I don't really have any memory of that. I was later told, that I went home for healing to have children because there was like an ancestral thing of, that they had cursed their womb basically.
Oh wow.
Um, so all of that got cleared up. But I remember, interestingly enough, like the sensation was the same. I was all loving. Everybody was so upset that I lost this baby. I'm like, no, it was just part of the plan. They didn't understand it. I was like in this whole high state of consciousness. Um, and the hardest part, was my husband. He blamed
Mm.
himself. And then, there was a lady that they also almost lost that night because they couldn't get the baby to come. And so right when they're trying to discharge me, the baby finally came. And so the baby was screaming. They had to like leave us and go tend to this whole situation. So that was kind of traumatic. And I still had a party planned for that night, and I still had it. Like nobody could get why I was in such this high place. So,
Wow.
you know, and later, I understand it now, but I just had this complete knowing and understanding like everything was as it should be. And that baby would come back to me. And the doctor confirmed it because, how I said my body wasn't ready for a child yet or didn't know how to create it. And the doctor came back with all the information. He said the systems didn't interconnect. Your body didn't know how to put a baby together. He's like,
Wow.
but if you want to have a child, you need to right away. And and so we did, and so we did, and yeah.
Oh
So,
wow.
but so after that, I think I tried to go back, and I just could not do it. And this was the final straw. I had a patient. It was a baby. I was supposed to give, the usual things, the vaccines. And I literally heard its soul scream. That's the only thing I could call it. I just heard the loudest scream in my head, in my mind, and I had no idea. I didn't know anything about all these things. Um, and I just couldn't do it.
Oh
I,
wow.
I literally said, I cannot go back. I can't do it. I'm sorry. I quit. Yeah. And
So because you were going to administer that, you heard the soul screaming.
yeah, I went to administer it. I started to, and I literally, the baby was barely like crying, but I just heard like, like I wanted to jump away and run, like you had just touched a hot iron. Like, what are you doing to me? It was,
Mm.
and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Western medicine or anything like that. I'm just saying, and so it made it hard even when my kids were that age because I knew they had to have certain ones, and I was very discerning after that. And my son did end up with that type of damage, but from a vaccine, and I almost died from a vaccine. So I'm not saying like it's the truth for everyone, but my family really reacted badly to the Hep B vaccine. Um, and so and I'm not sure, the immunologist I worked with said if I would have had one more, it would have killed me. I
Wow.
mean, I had that bad, and there was significant change in my son from the before and after, and he was very delayed after that. And everyone is different DNA wise. I guess that's why I'm such an advocate now. They do have the DNA technology to test all of that against your DNA. I'm a proponent that gets much more in use and available. My friend was one of the ones that created it. One of those technologies. Because like even when I had my husband tested here, half the meds he was on are considered like toxic to him.
Wow.
So I always proponent that, and I'm not giving medical advice, but I just am so happy to see those kind of technologies coming forward.
Absolutely. But see, I feel eventually, obviously, right, we are supposed to speak up about that. But even that, right, like when I gave just, during the whole pandemic, I made 2 videos on 2 different channels, and I was just sharing my story. That's it. What I was
Right.
guided to spiritually, not even, I'm not a medical, nothing. And they deleted both of my videos. And I was just like, the times,
Yes.
yeah. So it's amazing that,
You can't say that word at
but I,
all.
but I feel that eventually it will get out there. Well, it just has to change, because I think it just has to, right? It has to.
Mhm, mhm.
Especially when there's so many and that, yeah, the same. I never try to push anything on anybody. Do what you want, but don't try to, when I was guided a certain way and I know my connection, you
Mhm.
good luck trying to push me to do something
Well,
after,
and that's it, and there's other ones that I had no problem with. There's certain ones I'm to the point, certain ones I react to all meds now that like I don't take anything.
Mm,
I went that's the story after that particular NDE, and all of that. Um and some other things, some STEs and things that had happened that
what are STs?
spiritually transformative
Oh,
experiences.
okay.
They're not NDEs, but they're NDE like, or the connected to consciousness, after death communication, all these kinds of things.
Okay.
Um, because like my grandfather passed when I was also 7, and I think that's part of the reason I had that experience was to prepare me in a sense. And he visited me right before he passed. Like I knew he was gone before anybody else did. Like my mom got the call. I'm like, yeah, grandpa, and we went past grandpa to take me to school. They still took me to school that day. And we went past his house. I'm like, Grandpa's gone. She's like, I'm like, I knew he had already passed. Um, and he was like the closest person to me. He was the only kind person in my life at that point. So I think they kind of prepared me in that sense.
Mm,
But what was I with? Oh, so I had gotten to the point of being bedridden and my organs were shutting down and I was severely anemic and I wasn't functioning. And I think I saw a meme and it said something like, "What thoughts are you feeding?" And I realized all I had been feeding was sick, running to doctor, pills to pills, and not looking at my life.
mm.
And I literally, honestly, that day made the decision: I'm not going to be sick. And I just slowly tapered off everything, and here I am now. I'm not bedridden, and I'm not what you call, like I just made the conscious decision that I didn't need to live life this way. I'm not saying that's for everyone, but I realized that, and my fourth death experience, confirmed all of that because it was all about the power of words and thoughts and the emotions behind them, how they manifest reality. So it only cemented, my thoughts and abilities as what some would call a healer. I call it a remembrance guide of remembering who and what you are and how to heal yourself.
Mm.
But so it's been a road,
Yeah.
but I will honestly say the thing that opened me up, fully opened me, I think I had a 2019 experience with Christ consciousness, what I call Yeshua. He started to speak to me, and about call him Yeshua. He wasn't Jesus, is what he said, and that I, I was his sister. We were equal. He didn't want to be worshipped, and that we were capable of doing these things. That's the whole reason he came here to show us. That's just my experience. However you want to take it.
No, I had. Oh,
But,
go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. I'll say it after. Go ahead, go
but what happened was like I was shown Earth from the molten core and how it became to being and how I came into it. I've been here since the elements started with Earth and that energies, and I've had that confirmed. Um, and just the progression of it. And by the time it was over, I felt like I was gonna have this Lucy moment where I disappear and become one with everything. I call it after the movie Lucy, if you've ever seen it.
No,
But
absolutely.
yeah, so I literally was like that. I told him, "You have to stop. I can't." It was just this huge download of stuff, and I saw how like Earth developed and how the free will choices and that what we were choosing and how it created this, and how the whole thing was basically hijacked from where it was supposed to be and what it was supposed to be by our free will choices and things that we allowed. And like that accountability, I would I've never ugly cried so terribly. Like
Mm.
I felt like I was in the well, you know, it was Yeshua, but like the presence of God, and you're this person going, I messed up your creation. I'm so sorry. Because I connected to everything, you know? And I remember too, that's when I first like connected to trees. I called them the sentinels. There was these 3 big trees at the edge of our property. And like I just felt they were all trying to share their knowledge and their things and showing me how it could be. And um so that was very opening as far as understanding that. But as far as my clair abilities, it was when I got my Reiki attunements, because I'm a Reiki master teacher. And yeah, and that's when like my medical intuitive fully came back. I started hearing body parts and organs speak to me. They had voices, they had consciousness, they were complaining.
Ah.
And you know, I've only met one other intuitive recently, through work, that I interviewed, that sees and hears like I do.
Mm.
You know, it sees like the stuff we build up through lifetimes as this sludge. That's what they show it to me as. You know, so that was very profound for me, because then I realized, hey, you know, the body has a consciousness of its own separate from ours, and it's a symbiotic relationship. And how I speak to it, how I speak to the world, the choices I make, it's affected. It also helped me understand grief, because even though I'd had these death experiences and I know we're eternal and we're energy and all of these things, the physical body doesn't get it. It mourns the vibration of the voice, the touch, all of those things. You still have to let it grieve. It's the one that hangs on to all of that, the
Mm.
physical manifestation. You know, so it helped me understand so much once I had that understanding about our bodies. You know, and now when I do sessions, sometimes, you know, the body will go through like a half hour. It wants to point out every injury it's ever had that you did not validate me. It's hilarious sometimes. I don't mean funny, but it's just like, and people be like, well, yeah, I did that when I was 12. I'm like, well, your body wants you to know it felt it. It just wants that validation that it was her.
Mm.
You know, we don't realize, you know, plus, you know, with being that type of healer, you know, you don't realize that like there's all these zillions of energy centers that you, to me, when I go through people's energies, it's like this encapsulated thing in your energy center. So like you might have got hurt by someone that said something very derogatory to you when you were 5 and didn't know how to process it, right? And your body, it'll get trapped up in your shoulder. I mean, it's bizarre, but you know, these things stay unless we forgive and release and forgive ourselves. So it's kind of like releasing these trauma bubbles, I call them, you know, within the energy centers. I do a lot of portal and vortex work. I find there's a lot of bleed through timelines and things. Especially right now, they tell me that we're going through a living life review. So we have the opportunity to get rid of all of that sludge naturally, because people are like, I can't find the pinpoint. Why am I feeling this crappy? Why am I seeing all these things or having these weird dreams like I'm living these other lives? 'Cause all that stuff is trying to be processed and released emotionally.
Mm.
And I'm rambling, but this is just something that they really want people aware of right now, that may not be as in tune with themselves and wondering what's going on with me. But that's what I was shown. So, you know, I always say take what resonates. But um, so with that, you know, it's really open to a lot of things. Like when I do the portal work, like past lives will be like, oh, they get this ability from me. They get it. I call them other lives or other timelines. I don't go in the past, present, future per se, because through my experiences, became more what I call multidimensional. So in the void of creation, everything's going on at once. So if you're in that state of consciousness, you see backwards, forwards, everything in that sense. And I was even told by someone, and they're like, you know this already, don't you? But the reason I have that capability is to be at the right place, the right time for souls. And it happens to me all the time being in the divine flow. I'll be like, I'm supposed to go to the store today. No, we're supposed to stop here first, and it'll always be to help someone, connect something. I have beautiful stories like that. Like, can I share one?
Of
There was one
course.
that was really profound, and I get why my husband chose to go with me this day because it was just as much for him as for me, and why I'm a big advocate about mental health. Um, there was this day we went out, and I was going to stop at the gas station at the edge of town on the way in. I'm like, no, it doesn't feel right. So I went into town instead. And so on the way back, we finally stopped. Well, there's a lady, she came running up to us. She had this stack of files in her hand. She's like, I am schizophrenic. I need your help. Can you take me down to the clinic? I'm having an episode. Out of nowhere. I don't even know where she came from. This is the weirdest part. Well, my husband has been diagnosed with schizophrenia, right? But I've since found out, like he's very in tune. He's helped connect a lot of things for me, for people, yeah. But so it's near and dear to my heart in that sense. And so my husband's like, I'll hop in the back seat. Get her in here. We'll take her.
Oh
You
wow.
know, for him to see that. And then she's talking all the spiritual stuff that like I have kind of talked, except she's putting it in a lot more religious context.
Ah.
And we took her to the clinic because that's the same one he goes to. And when she left, he's like, there's nothing wrong with that lady or what she's talking about. The only thing wrong with her is she's way over medicated. He's like, I am so thankful for you because I stepped in on a lot of that stuff. You know, um, Not in time. He had a lot of, you know, issues before that because I was unaware at that time, when they first were diagnosing him with that. Anyway, but for him to see that all play out and for someone else to say the things I do about realities and stuff, and for him to even, it was kind of almost a validation for me as well that like he does hear me when I talk about these things, and he's experienced them himself a lot, and he's had NDEs and everything else, but he was always very scientific. He has a genius IQ, all of these things. So it's like it may be there, but I came here to experience Earth this time. So I always respect that and try not to feed him all this stuff. And and like I have family members too that have all their pre-birth memories that they never like lost their connection,
Mm.
but they're like, I just came here to scout or I just came here to observe. I'm not supposed to do the work you're doing this lifetime. They're very aware. So, my whole family has had experiences and things like that. So Betty, our mutual friend, always says, like, how do you go out and be normal when your family's so in tune? Like, we don't. Like, we'll end up having conversations with people or helping people, and people either like give us a wide berth, depending on the energy they're carrying, or like they want in, they're like eavesdropping and hey. But no, for us to have a normal outing just doesn't happen.
Wow.
But yeah. So it's made life very interesting, but those are kind of the key points that I think. But my understanding has come being, one of my aspects is like a shaman, so I have that understanding and the quantum space that I'm able to go to. And I understand energies now that like there are obviously, some that these experiences can mentally fracture them, right? But others, I have found where it's just what I call personality complexes. From my experience, we take a collection of like complexes of our oversoul that help us during this life. And so what I see happening in some people is these other aspects come in for something they're trying to go forward to have to accomplish, and they're coming in to help with these abilities, but they're not being um, assimilated, I guess, or however you want. I don't know a good term for that. Properly, they're not in alignment, so then they're being heard as external voices or different things. And I'm not saying every instance is this, but so it's always very important to me that whenever I hear this, I'm always like, check with a doctor, check with a shaman, you know. But in that sense, because there's always an alignment thing, and I found that I'm a big advocate of that, and I think it's so beautiful too that the medical and the psychiatric community is coming up with that. In fact, I got to meet the doctor that literally got it put in the ICD-9 thing, where it's a spiritual diagnosis.
Oh
Like they're not
wow.
mental, they're having a spiritual. So that is in the ICD-9 diagnosis now.
Wow.
So I'm so happy that we're making these type of progresses where, and we have a lot of, those type of therapists coming to our various spiritual groups to learn more and to know what that looks like so they can help their patients more. And I'm just so happy to be alive in a space and time where we're making this kind of progress.
Oh, absolutely. I wasn't even aware of that. So thank you for sharing that. Uh,
Hmm.
I mean, I related to so much of the things you were saying, like, but obviously I didn't want to interrupt you, but
Oh, you're fine. I love having a conversation.
no, no, absolutely. But one thing that stood out to me was when you talked about like the earth being hijacked, right? Because recently I started having over the past, I don't know, months, I started having all these visions of like ancient things, right?
Mhm.
And even seeing myself, to me, feeling pretty clear that that was me, right? And me being this being, right? Like uh I see, I'm even still feeling comfortable, like getting comfortable telling people, like, well, I haven't told anybody actually, but well, let me first ask you, and before I even go into that,
Mhm.
let me first
Okay.
ask you. So, who do you think hijacked? Because that I saw myself as this being arguing with other beings, almost like I was trying to stand up for the human people here, and I was this other being, and I was having an argument, like with like that, like almost like I don't know. It kind of reminded me of maybe when they wanted to let that flood, the famous flood, the great, and I was trying to like know, and it reminded me of like like, because even that in the Bible, like they don't realize that it, because I had read about that, in the Sumerian text that predates the Bible, all that stuff, or that's where just where they got it from, where they talk about like even the story of Noah, right? But his name was like this long name, but it was like this being one of them that warned Noah and told him, hey, get your family out. Boom, the earth is about to, because these other beings had decided to kind of cause all of this, right? And all this. So I mean, it's really similar to the biblical story, just predates it, and it seems like that's where the Bible took that story from, right? So it kind of had that feeling to it. Like here I am arguing, like trying to stand up for humans, and they weren't having, like, they weren't having it, right? Like, so when you talked about hijack, what exactly, um like, what did you see in regards to like who hijacked it?
Well, in that particular instance, I just knew like our free will choices had put us somewhere different. But I had a beyond concept hypnosis and
Mm,
session, and in it, it showed me as like the elemental, or they called them elementals. They, in the sense of each emotion that goes into creation is considered an elemental. So I was love, and like they showed my husband as envy. And it was interesting because I recently found out from someone else's experience, like emotion, there was angels named after like these emotions. So I'm not sure, but I was holding in it. I was holding what appeared to be earth, and I was like looking into it. Like I was holding this energy that was the earth construct in my hands, and there was these other creators that were like peering through a portal at earth, right? And they had these hoods on, and they were looking at it. And I remember in my beyond quantum hypnosis, I started to cry because I had created this perfect version of earth with peace and love and all of these things. And they said, no, that wouldn't work. That couldn't happen. So they started putting all of these like darker emotions into it. They said there needed to be balance. And I was so upset. So they said that, and I had another experience where I'll get into of this, but that I put all of these aspects, fractals of myself, of love, into all timelines and everything. I put myself into my own creation, is what they said. And this is my higher self during this hypnosis, to help balance this and bring the earth back into balance. But unbeknownst to me, because we have, this time differentiation, um, how long that would take. Right? Because they told me like 2012, this like all this truth would be coming to light, and like we would be having the awareness that we do now and all this kind of thing. But like some people wouldn't be able to handle it. It would literally fracture their mind as more and more things they thought were myth, legend, or biblical. came to be, or awareness that they were true, and all of these things. But anyway, so in this quantum hypnosis, I talked about that. And I mean, like, I was crying because I couldn't believe what they did to this creation, and why they'd want to do that. But I said it was because they were envious of my creation.
Mm.
I don't know. But that was just an aspect of love. Like I believe I was just tapping into all of that. But in one of the reason I asked and might have triggered that during my hypnosis, because one of the things I think I asked about, like, one of my experiences, they showed me on this, like, neon blue grid. And at every cross point of this grid, there was a version of me going out into infinity. And they showed, and then they switched and showed me, like, there was all these, animal aspects as well of me, like, or and so that kind of validated what they told me there. Like, they showed me all these virgins, and I couldn't figure out why there was all of these me's. And what was interesting about the blue grid experience is, like, she was in, like, what we would call almost like a medical robe, and she looked like me, like, when I was young, because when I was young, she had white blonde hair, like this pure being, like, she was just, I mean, how you would probably say somebody looks angelic, like porcelain skin, the white blonde, like, but she was wearing this, like, white robe. But going into, like I said, infinity for that experience. So what I was given in the understandings of that through various STEs, and things was, that all of these aspects were put back in here to create an energetic balance, to bring us back to the frequency. Like, Eden's been here all along. It's the free will choices and the things that were put into it that dropped it, right? So we were, and other things I've learned later, that we are trying to slowly get us back in the correct timeline, hence all the Mandela effects. Like, after my NDEs, I have like a 76% on the Mandela test of things I know I saw in person, like the Ellis Island and all these other things, if you've ever taken that test. So there's incremental things, but sometimes it's a huge jump. Like, for some people with NDEs, they've come back and people they knew existed no longer exist, things like that. I haven't had any major ones, other than, like, and people have confirmed this, like, I had a fourth son. Even my daughter remembers him, but we don't. You know, so that's, one of the major, fourth child. I mean, that was her younger brother, and I remember this. She remembers this, but it doesn't exist in this timeline. So I'm just saying, like, but as these timelines shift and we jump frequencies and different things, so there's not always, I think if we lock yourself in a box and think this is the only reality, this is the only thing, what I'm talking about, it seems like, but to me, it's always a frequency choice. And you can drop or go higher, you're never, like, locked into one. What they showed me is that, like, we create our own timeline in that sense, and it weaves in and out with others as almost like a quantum entanglement. They give me the explanation of, like, a color form. You know how color form, it gives you the whole backdrop, and so we all have the backdrop of Earth, but what we're creating here is of our thought system, what we choose to experience as a collective and individually.
Absolutely.
Like, some people don't talk about this, but that's how, when we want to talk about, like, people interfering with how reality plays out, there's many levels on this planet that understand how it works and how it's created. I haven't watched news since 2001, let's put it that way.
Wow.
I think like that, because what you feed your mind, you create at the same time.
Exactly.
People get really triggered when I say, in the void of creation, the chicken and the egg exist at the same time.
Say
We're
that
created
again.
at
Say that
the same
again.
time. The chicken and the egg were created at the same time in the void of
Oh.
creation. And
Mm,
that's literally how it works. So if you think it, you've already created it.
mm.
So it's at the same time. So let's say I wanted you to think this and I say this and you hear this repeatedly, that's why they call it programming, or conditioning, like, so as a collective, we've been conditioned to believe certain things, you know, because it's been taught to us over and over, generation and generation, right? It doesn't mean it's the truth, it just becomes our truth. That's why I say there's many layers of truth. And that's how I see reality because of my experiences of how they showed me things are created. And you know,
So you feel that? No, no. Go ahead. You can finish your, because I was just gonna
oh no,
circle
I
back to
was just
the
yeah.
hijacking thing. Like, did no? Well, I mean, you were shown, right, that it was these other okay, for like, there's nothing I haven't like experienced in some way. So
Experience.
that's why, yeah, you could talk about anything.
Yeah,
Like,
but
someone
yeah,
someone recently asked me like if I believed in time travel or something, and I, of course, I was like, yeah, absolutely, because see, like, that was my first thing, premonitions, right? I could date it to when I was 5 years old, and so how is it possible that I see the future more than anything? I believe that like that it already exists. So outside of here, time isn't real, right? And so that's how I look at it. Or like, it gets weird because, right, I've seen in the past, I've seen in the future. So my brain was already there, like trying to understand, okay, how is it possible that I dream the future unless it already exists? So that would make it more scientific. It's not really this spiritual thing. Wow, somehow, because then my conscience traveled to the future, saw that, and then came back to this body and gave me that glimpse. Unless outside of here, it really isn't a future. It's like, so it just, yeah, right. You could keep
mhm.
going.
and
What's
and it gets very complicated for the
Yeah, yeah.
human mind to like, my husband sometimes when I would get these huge channels and I'm like, I have to say it out loud or this person won't remember it, right? And he'd be like, whoa, that's too much for me. Like that's, like, and like the string theory and things like that, or, and then he kind of understood me because there's that one experiment, like how atoms react when they're being observed versus not observed.
Oh,
I forget
yeah,
that
yeah,
experiment.
yeah.
So when he watched that, then he's like, oh, I get it now, you know? And so, for me and my understanding, what little I have, I say anybody that claims to know everything knows nothing,
Mm,
right? Because we come here to re-experience and relearn, and that's the miracle of it, is to get to relive the magic of it and not know everything, right? Um, but from my understanding of it, yeah, everything exists. Like when I walk people through, like sometimes if they've never had any energy work where they healed their fractures in their timelines, because every choice or trauma or energetic decision, looks like a splinter. It's almost like the tree of life. It looks like a splinter when I go through people's energy. I'm like, at 5 or 6, this happened to you. There was a major choice or trauma, like a change, a major change. Yes. Like they'll show me because that's like where your timeline starts to splinter, especially at 5 or 6. I find a lot of people do because then they're off to school. They're exposed to other thoughts and other people, but or it's traumatic to them to see that there's this difference, like they're no longer in their universe, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
um it's interesting. So what they showed me, and literally one, I can even share an experience where literally in real time they showed me like how I'm constantly choosing whichever version of a timeline I want to experience, like a Rolodex. We do it all the time, just not consciously, right? By
Mm,
our decisions and what emotions we're choosing, right? If you're not having a loving thought, you're going to experience suffering. It's just how it happens,
mm,
because you're choosing a certain vibration. So there was this one time, I'll just share this. Me and my daughter, my daughter's also an NDE and has had abilities since, yeah, never lost them. And so we were coming home from the city, and I had like a weird vision that really unsettled me like 2 weeks before, of like this fiery crash. And I remember in this crash, you know, um, they were telling me I was okay, but I was looking back at the car, the fact that they were burnt up. I'm like, no, we died. I'm not okay. They're like, you're okay. Just come with us.
Mm.
So it was this really bizarre experience. So I was already edgy about going out, right? And so we were leaving, and all of a sudden, both me and my daughter were like, deer. And we both freaked out. She's like, Mom, I'm just gonna put like the white light, like a cone of protection. She's like, 'cause something's going on if we're both saying deer. And so she did that. So then we were really hyper vigilant about what was on the road and everything else. And we we took a turn off to go home, and we both literally saw what I would call a ghost deer, because it was like this much above the normal timeline,
Wow.
literally crossed in front of us, but it wasn't solid. It just crossed. It was like, oh, so we were supposed to hit it in this timeline. This one, it's gonna, um, but it freaked us out. I mean, to see that in front of your own eyes was like, whoa. And a good friend of mine was having similar experiences with like these timelines, and we were with them at the same time. Um, so there was a lot of that going on where they wanted me to have that awareness that, it is a constant choice and it can be altered. Um, because this is the weird thing. She almost got in an accident. And this is before they left. They went to like run one of the kids home or something. And before they left, I said to them, I said, now you stay safe now, this and that, which I don't normally do. But I said something really weird to the second oldest. I said, just remember, like everything is your choice. Even when bad things happen, you don't have to choose for them to happen. I forget. I said something really weird along that lines, right?
Mm.
And so she went to take them home, and all of a sudden, the youngest of her children started writing this weird stuff, and some of it was code, and some of it was words. And while they were out, they almost got hit. But she literally, like, their their vehicle, like, literally moved to the side, like they should have crashed and all this stuff. And so they were freaking out, like, how the heck did this happen? And she said she like saw everything in slow mo for a few minutes, right? And but when they got home, the youngest said something like he knew what had happened. And then we looked at what he was writing, and he was writing this stuff and like writing codes, but also writing like something about where they were and, like not for it to happen. I forget exactly what it was now because this was a few years back. So then it gave me that awareness, like, things can always be altered. You can always choose something different, right?
Mm.
And so since my other experiences that I've had and being pulled out of body and different things for messages, one of the things I understand and how they give me information is everything is in like technical terms. Like it's all in um like there's fiber optic cables, there's the they talk about everything in light codes. Like
Mm.
there's literally codes that create everything. And like they have me, like when I work with people, like some people I activate or give codes. Other ones they've taken on codes that don't belong to them, that are not in alignment with their energetic system, that I have to remove. One of uh I think it was right after the quantum hypnosis and remembering this. I think it was the next day. I woke up while I was downloading these golden codes, the 000 something something, were all downloading in front of my eyes. And they're like, just stay calm, we're almost done. They like were filling me full of all of these codes that glowed. And which is really cool because like people that I've activated since are now getting these codes. You know what I mean? Or holding codes for other people. And my understanding that they gave me is like, that's why each of us kind of plan to meet, or different people have different codes or different upgrades for different people. It's almost like carrying a flash drive.
No,
That makes sense.
exactly.
But that they use everything technical. Like they said, I'm a grid architect. And so they show, like I've had many experiences seeing the different forms of grids, the honeycomb, the new one that's coming in, which is the violet grid, that blue one that I mentioned, which is the original grid, um, and all the work that gets done like that. It's very much like, I guess you would say, Tron. I always try to compare things to movies because I think somebody said it was like Tron, to give people an analogy or something visual that they can relate to. So that is very, very interesting. because they often give me the context of simulation. Some people get upset with that. It's very real, but it's a way to be physical and experience the senses and create within your own. You know how I said I put myself into my own creation? It's a way to experience the things that you create, right? And so, from my understanding, they present it almost like a holodeck, like this is the avatar. My fourth near-death experience, they said it was a vehicle, and they were trying to teach me how to restart my vehicle because it had obviously stopped.
Mm.
And I had to do a systems check, is what they called it. You know, yeah. So, and I'm not saying, the other thing that they gave me was not everybody's here the same. Some are human souls, some are projected consciousness from various places of and even times, you know. And they've shown me that like a lot of galactics, what other people might call ET or other races from other universes, other timelines, have come here to like I know personally I answered the call of Gaia. It wasn't for the people of Gaia, but her and the planet and her what's indigenous to this planet, and I've had some recent validation about that, through others who have gotten this similar knowledge. So it was that was really big for me because I felt so alone. Like, am I the only one getting this understanding and this, because in my beyond quantum hypnosis, I had many lifetimes as a Sasquatch, and I understand that that's where my ability to open portals and vortexes, because they're a multidimensional being, but they are the indigenous being of this planet. They belong to Earth. That was the natural ascension of us before it was altered. You know what I mean? So I understand these things, but trying to tell other people that, I don't know how much that would flow.
No, I think I'm almost 100% sure. I put it in my book. I've seen what they call Sasquatch, Bigfoot. So, but see, the tribe that I will go to ceremony with, I can't necessarily say anything about it, but they're familiar with, why most native. I'm sure you could go on YouTube and you'll see so many native tribes have stories of Bigfoot, Sasquatch. So, I had a connection. That's why I feel he appeared, because yeah, it was like that day I was in such a high vibration. I was just grateful. I was just in a whole nother vibration. I was up in the mountains. And so that's why I feel on that day, it was like, yeah, if I was just this pure being myself, even in this physical body, and boom, it appeared. And I was like, whoa, it was just beautiful. It's beautiful. Right. And then it was gone. Right. So I was like, and then you try to, then the human comes in like, did I really? I'm not. I didn't really see that. Nah, I couldn't have. But then after, I think that same week, I found this huge footprint, right? And it was in this place that like I can't see because it was at the steep part of the mountain, and I was like, I can't see someone walking barefooted up here. Like at first, I thought it was a bear print because I just saw the first half, and then I saw it extended, and I was like, wait a second, ain't no way someone was walking up here barefoot on this part of the mountain. Like, no way. Like, I just couldn't see it. So I was like, all right. So it was like confirmation for me. Okay, I really did see what I saw within that same week. Oh, and at that time, there had been a fire. So they had closed the mountain. So there was a lot less traffic, a lot less people. And of course, I didn't listen. I was like, you're not going to stop. I'm going to go on my hike no matter what. So I was back there, and I think I ran into one person that day on the hiking trail, right? There was just one person. So I was like, okay, that's probably why I saw, there wasn't a lot of traffic. So that's probably why also, the Bigfoot appeared. What was I
And
going
I
to
think that's why I had Bigfoot experiences on that 191 acres. And I didn't even realize some of the things my family had seen were Bigfoot because I didn't realize it, and we didn't have that knowledge back then, that the big orbs that they were seeing, because in their interdimensional state, they travel in these like big orbs. And my family had seen those. They thought it, they related it to ET stuff, which I did also have. But I'm just saying, like, and there was a time my brothers were freaking out because they were trappers, and something literally broke down the trees way up high, like they just scattered the trees. And now, I've learned that, they break them and towards the roadway, and that's what they did. I mean, they did it around every trap that my brothers tried to set. So they were freaking out. And I saw it with my own eyes because they made me and my mom hop in the truck. Come look at this. There's no way. What happened here? And my dad and I one night, we heard pounding. It felt like on the top of the house. And he's like, it's them. I'm like, I was scared. I was hiding. But the next day, the next morning we went out and there was these giant footprints, like you said, in our drive, because we had like a clay driveway, because like I told you, it used to be a quarry, so it sunk, but so they were maybe bigger, but there was one set of large and the others were smaller. So probably a
Absolutely.
couple.
So let me ask you this: why do these beings to some people appear in a more aggressive way? Because every time, I like, even that, when I saw it, I found no fear. I felt like this good energy, or when I've had like the star people appear, it's always a good energy. So to some, when they appear to them in that way, why is it? Is it like, do you take it as it's kind of like, because they're still appearing to them, so it's like, okay, you're getting to see something that not a lot of people get to see. So why are they appearing? Is it to warn, or like what is it? What is it? Why do they appear that way to some people in a more aggressive?
Well, more aggressive, I'm not sure. I mean, I know from my understanding from people like, Mike Patterson and stuff like that, have direct interaction, they've never told me, but they have emotions, and I'm sure if people are disrespecting the land or the natural nature, this is their home. This is indigenous. I mean, if anyone has a right to be here, it's them. So, and in my understanding, which is terrible, like it to say in that sense, but what I have been shown since the beginning, even when I came back at 7 for my thing, is that like the beings of this planet were meant to be symbiotic with it. Humans, the human Homo sapien version, didn't have that symbiosis. They're more parasitic as far as the energy that like they take, but they don't complete the divine circuit, is what they've shown me this a lot, how to be this divine conduit to complete this energetic circuit, so that we're not drawing from the energies of the planet, but our own soul energy and our soul connection, and so, I can understand where they want to help us, because a lot of us are actually, they have the understanding that I do, that we are hybridized. Like if we were left alone to evolve, we would be Sasquatch. But, and so they have that affinity towards us, but they also don't tolerate ones that are not behaving accordingly, and taking care of the planet, I guess. That's my proposition. I mean, like I told you, look what they did to our traps, like you're not hunting here, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That makes sense. So what else was I gonna ask you? So you said your daughter had an NDE as well. Do you mind sharing about that, or is that more personal to her, or would you mind sharing about her experience?
Oh, well, like I think my son did it at birth. He was born blue. My daughter, she had two instances. One she calls more of an out of body, where she was kind of saved. I don't get into those, like, in out of respect for her. But she had one where she almost died by fire, and one by drowning at a young age. Yeah. And my other one was born, my youngest is just born connected. She never lost it. Has pre-birth, in between life memory, planning memory. I mean, she has all that.
Wow. See, and I think that's how I was born, but I think just the environment made me close it off, made me disconnect. And then at some point it started getting brought back. And at first it was I guess probably when I was songwriting, doing that, and then it would just, all the messages, things would come out. And back then, right, there was no Google or YouTube, or so
right.
I would make out these words, and I knew to go look at the encyclopedia. The encyclopedia is from A to Z, so I would know, like, track it down, make out the word, like I'm saying something with this, look it up, and there it would be. And I would be,
right, yep.
Ancient places. So I'd be like, how do I even know about this place? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
And my daughter's kind of funny because she usually sees like everything stays. My youngest, my oldest always makes sure I clarify which one, but my youngest daughter, like everything, she's always in deja vu. So she always usually knows about 10 minutes before. And my children were all very telepathic. And so, and that's honestly why my son was delayed. We found out later because, and this is the hard part about, not hard, but interesting part about raising children with abilities because I got called into the school. This is how we figured it out because he was reading the teacher's thoughts and telling her and telling her it's okay, this won't happen, you
wow.
know? Yeah, and but then I knew why he was, because he thought everybody could communicate that way. That's why he was nonverbal. He didn't get that we couldn't, his sister could hear him, but we couldn't,
Wow.
like I wasn't as aware then, because I always wondered how they would like he'd be downstairs doing this. They were like Irish twins. Like he'd distract me and she'd be there, but yet they knew what each other was doing and what was supposed to do. I mean, like sometimes I even said this in my fourth death experience, like human me's the dits. Like, how did I not put this all together, knowing what I know or my own experiences at the time? But I was just so during that time, I was so busy trying to raise 3 young children. They're all like a year and a half apart, I was so caught up in that and not in a spiritual state of being, I guess you could say. So
Yeah.
I was oblivious of some of the things that now I look back and go face palm.
Yeah.
But
No, that,
yeah, so
but
and my youngest is always funny in this sense because she'll be like, "Oh yeah, mom, I was just waiting for you to remember." Like she remembers these things, but she
oh
won't tell
wow.
me until I start bringing it up, and then she'll tell me about. So
And
she's
that's
fun.
funny because I wonder like why. See, sometimes the same how you said face palm, like why was the environment that unwelcoming that I just completely because now I mean I used to the same, right? I would talk to who we call the creator, God, have these conversations. That was my imaginary friend, like source itself. Like I didn't have like a spirit imaginary friend here. I would talk directly to source. That's why it was even hard when the religion and about like kind of how everybody started worshiping Jesus, it didn't make sense to me because it was almost like, well, I connect directly with source. So, and but even by his own words, where he says, like, don't pray to me, say, Our Father who art in heaven, this, even the way he taught. So it just didn't make sense to me. And so I guess that's why Jesus, like the way, he's appeared to so many people, he never appeared to me because I was already talking to like, so that, right? Like I'd never really, but I acknowledged them. I never did, I never wanted to disrespect them in any way or this and that. But it was more kind of like how you said when he came to you and he was like, "Oh, you're like, we're, nobody's it's just like that." That's
Yeah.
kind of how I saw it, right? Like, and there's been
Mhm.
so many that brought the messages like Jesus. So that's kind of since I was little, and then somewhere you just start disconnecting, and I guess they had to give me those jolts in life, the car accident, another car accident, and this. I almost drowned when I was little, but I didn't actually get to that point. My cousin jumped in and rescued me. So I always had a lot of little close calls, so I don't know, that kind of kept me.
Like, wake up, Omar.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It kind of kept me like right there, right? Like knowing
Right.
something's or just acknowledging that something like how you said when someone was driving and it was like, how did we miss that? Yesterday the man I interviewed who's a medium, he said that when he was little and they wouldn't build bike ramps that he flew and it was like something literally grabbed him in the air and put him down. And so everyone was like, "Whoa, how'd you do that?" All his friends were like, "How'd you do that?" And he was like, "Nah, something
Divine
grabbed me."
intervention. I call
Yeah,
those.
yeah, exactly. And but they were like, "We didn't see anything," and there he's like, "No, something grabbed me from the air." And I had that where I was gonna crash, and I have a friend that would always tell this story. He's like, I don't know, the car was spinning, and I literally felt it because I was behind the wheel, so I felt like this huge hand just grabbed the car and turned it.
Right?
Yeah, like, and it
I've
was
had.
raining, and all you see is the car lights as my car was spinning through.
Yep.
Like something just grabbed it and boom, straightened it out.
I had one accident like that too. And literally when I got out, my friend was driving. It was raining and it was this curve and we spun out and went in the field. But I was like, how do we do that? We just like bumped from here to there. And the people running up, and I do know this from living there, they're like, people don't crash here and live.
Oh
like
wow.
ever.
Oh wow.
So I do know what you mean. But that divine intervention, what I call angelic moments, I want to share too with you because my daughter's experience with the fire, I can say it from the experience part that I of it, because she was being watched by my aunt and my brother. Well, when I got there, my brother's like, I don't know how it happened. I shouldn't have been able to move that fast to catch her. And we both should have been burned. And how that happened so fast, it was like one of those things, like something just shooshed him and shooshed him back. He's like, he was visibly shaken. And my brother is like he's one of these big bad macho kind of guys,
Wow.
So he was shaken. And this other time that I was shaken because I had this giant china cabinet. Um and I'm not even sure how it got knocked over. My daughter was sitting next to it. I don't know if the chair hit it just right or what, but it went to crash and it should have hit my son. But there
Mm.
was this white blur, of light just went, and he was across the room. Like I thought he was under it, and here he's over there, and there was no way. Like I saw it, and I was so shooken up. I called my husband's work, and I made him come home because I couldn't move. There was glass literally everywhere. All of our wedding china, everything it imploded over the whole room, right? And
Wow.
here I am with 3 kids. How can I clean that up with 3 little babies? And so yeah, but I literally saw him just like be transported to the other
That's
side of the room.
amazing.
Yeah, so those and the after death communication from my mom. I like to bring this up sometimes just for people to have an understanding. She died at 61 from cancer, but her after death communication was like she chose that way to die so we'd have more time to reconcile her death and it wouldn't be such a soul trauma. Plus,
Mm.
she said she could help us more in the spiritual work that we're all supposed to do from that side rather than this one. So she aids a lot and adds a lot of energy, or sometimes the spirits, like, I have mediumship, like if they're not strong enough to connect, she will be that battery, so to speak, and things like that. Um, but that was all planned for her. But one of the things that she says, is that we are always safe and always divinely protected. And I remember it was one of the first interviews that never aired that I was supposed to do. And it was a medium that was interviewing me. But before it was supposed to start, my mom came through with all this stuff and it rattled her so much and me that I think that, she never ended up releasing it because
What?
yeah,
Oh.
what was interesting is because my mom was showing her like how divinely protected I was, and she had never seen anything like that. She's like, because they kept showing her with this giant umbrella and like storms and destruction, everything around me, like that it could not harm me. She wanted me to know that no matter what was going on in the world, it couldn't harm me, that I had to finish my task and stay on my purpose, blah, 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 that I was divinely protected, like nothing could touch me. And it like, to me, the lady was visibly shaken. She's like, so I don't know, but it was rather interesting to me. And she does come through and remind me of that. And the other thing she constantly wants to remind me and everyone is, to find your joy.
Mm.
In that moment of joy, you're experiencing the world. You are not creating in
Mm.
that sense.
Absolutely.
That's the level of detachment, to enjoy this story that we were meant to have, playing these roles, as they say it to me. They very much even have pulled me from my body to show, like, I'm not the story. This is the story of Lorelei, and this is what she's doing here. My NDEs are not my story. Some people, then that becomes their story. That's not who I am. My consciousness is here and experiencing it, but it's not who I am at the core of my being. If that
Mm.
makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I guess I was able to have a glimpse into that or an understanding early on because even as an artist, I had my artist name, right? So I was already this artist name, and then I had another artist name, and then I had another AKA. So it's like, and that was common, like, and the kind of music I was doing, like the hip hop music, there were people with like 10 different aliases. So we would, you see like how so many people, and then to friends, I was called another thing. And then, you know, so everywhere you just call it. So, you know, there was even a time when I was like, how, like, man, I should have like a, you know, kind of like a mental breakdown from, because, you know, I would have to be one way when I was around like my girlfriend that I was with. I had to be one way at work. I had to be one way when I was doing this stuff. So it was like, you know, it was just weird. And it wasn't like someone trying to like put on a fake persona. It was just different environments that you had to like, okay, I have to be this way here. I have to be this way here. I have to be this way here. So it was just adapting. It wasn't like trying to be like anything fake that you weren't. It was just having to adapt to all these situations at that time in my life. And I was able to do it, you know. So I get how this would be a role because see, so this is one of the things I've had since they always show me the message, like the universal message inside of this creation.
Yes.
So I always see it. Yeah, I get to see it here.
Mm-hmm,
You know,
mm-hmm.
so
The one thing they really stressed with me, and that's like when I came back, because in my 2019 experience, you know, I was supposed to start speaking my truth. And they wanted, you know, they showed me all this stuff about I was supposed to travel to do different stuff and speak about this and all these different things. And I was like, no, 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 I'm this hermit on the hill, a Midwest housewife. No, you know, I'm not doing this, you know. And then I had my fourth death experience, and they're like, well, you know, I've since met people that have had this where they said, you know, basically like you came back to speak this, you know, you're no longer this role. This is not what you are supposed to be doing. You know, you came back to speak your truth. If you're not going to, you don't need to be here. You're redundant. We sent you here to do this. This was, you know, the agreement. You know, you went back to do this. And so, you know, what was it, 2021, when I finally started speaking about the things that had happened to me. But the main thing, you know, that they stressed is authenticity in everything. As long as you are in that authentic flow, you know, and speaking the truth from your experiences, you know, that's what they asked me to do. That's another reason, like they, you know, I only read or maybe see what I'm guided to. Like I don't watch all these videos on NDEs, and I don't read these spiritual books. You know, there's been a few excerpts, excuse me, here and there that I've seen or have been guided to, or they show me. Like I remember even the Bible, I haven't really read that. Even though I grew up Catholic, I'm sure they taught us various verses here. But like I think it was Revelations I read just because they guided me to it once. And there was this one time, and the more I go on my journey, the more it makes sense that they woke me up numerous times throughout the night and in the morning so that I would remember this. And it was Romans 6:13. They kept saying Romans 6:13, which is interesting because my son was supposed to be born on the 12th of June, but he came on the 13th. And my uncle's name is Roman, so I'm like, is that related? What is this? But if you read Romans 6:13, it talks something about the death of the body, but not the soul, you know. So it totally makes sense to me. I just read it a few days ago, where I haven't looked at it since that came to me. I'm like, oh, now that makes sense. When it first came through, I wasn't in a state where I could get. And that's why, you know, when I was guided to create my stuff and you know, the platforms that I have, they gave me the name Spirit Sight and Spirit Insight, because they're like, with divine sight, you know, the truth is in all things. Like it's almost like the words glow to you, or the meanings come to you when you're in that state of flow. Or like if you're not, you'll read it and go, okay, whatever. You know what I mean? Like it won't have the same. But that's where they show me, like, there's codes in these words, and there's codes in these things, and the words that we use. And that's another reason I told you when we started, like, I don't use labels. Yes, I'm clair-abled. Yes, I can do mediumship. Yes, I have psychic abilities. Yes, I'm a medical intuitive. You know, all of these different things that I am capable of, that we have given labels just so other people understand what it is we do, you know. And you know, but each of those is fed in energy by the collective, because like, look, I mean, like, even look at the term witch. Like I had this experience that happened to me, and Spirit even told me, witch is not what you think it is, and not what your society believes it is. You know, it's not the label that people say. You know, because look at how we've constructed it and made it fearful, and they're really alchemists. They know the energies and the codes and how to work with nature to create these things. I mean, at its core, what a true like witch is supposed to be. You know, And that was an amazing experience I had actually with it was the divine feminine, but she presented herself as Ira, or what we would know as the goddess Horus.
Mm.
And I had this profound experience with her. And that was one of the things she said. She's like, you asked for this. This is yours now. You are, you're a witch. And I'm like, no, witch? What? Like, ah. She's like, no, that is not what that's supposed to be at all, And this is what it means to have these abilities and things like that. So that was really interesting. And I don't think that's the first time I spoke about that in an interview, because people, yeah, but that's where I say, like, a lot of these terms have uh, changed. I mean, look at what used to be like merry and gay, and now like we have changed the way words and symbols and different things mean all through history, and given them different energy.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Yeah, no, and I'm glad you feel comfortable to share with me. So thank you. That, I know you right now too, when you were talking, it made me fill up with joy, because you reminded me of how much I love this human experience. Even with all its difficulties, I constantly remember that. Even that, when I'm climbing up a mountain or something and I'm just happy, I'm like, I'm the only one up there, and I know a bear could come out and eat me at any moment. Things like that, but I'm happy. And and I get to see, oh man, I get to see so many miracles. Like there's always something. Like the other day, right? Maybe a couple weeks ago, I went up there because for like healing, right? I needed to heal myself. And so I'm climbing up the mountain, and this vulture is flying with me the whole way up, and I'm like, and then I realized I got to like the halfway point, and then it took off, and I was like, wow, it really did stay with me the whole way, like halfway up the mountain. And that's what the vulture is. It's called the golden purifier, and its scientific name. So it was, as I was trying to heal, and it was like helping me cleanse off this residual energy of whatever I had. So it was just amazing. It's amazing to see these things, right? And to be connected. And then on my way down, there was a little, I was like, is that, a coyote? And it looked like one, but then as I got closer, I still had like the mountain one like that, this little part, and then it was running right there. And then I realized it was running like a gorilla. And then I was like, wait a second, that's a cub. That's a little bear cub. And so that has, yeah. So I was like, oh, wow. And that's probably like the fifth one I've seen in person, or bear or anything, right? So it was this cute little bear cub, and it's running it saw me, and then I looked at it, and then it just starts running, like probably to go catch up to mama. So I'm like, uh-oh, like
Mama.
yeah. Well, mom has to be close. So I was like, uh-oh. And I just went down, and I was just looking, making sure it doesn't come where it ran through the trail right there, making sure it doesn't come out of the bushes, because right there is where the trail split, and I had to go straight, and the cub went to the left. So I was like, all right, well, I'm just gonna go this way. But the cub had to do with healing. So it was a perfect, and it was a baby, so it was like the vulture was like cleaning off whatever, and then the bear cub brought in that newborn healing of like starting something. Like, so it was just like the way all the messages are there. It's just this amazing thing, right? And so I get to experience those things, and that makes me happier than, like, I can't even explain, right? So even just right now, hearing your story, like, it fills me with joy. I love hearing these stories. I love, like, it's a beautiful thing.
Oh, I do. And and that's what makes it so magical. Like we keep trying to take, pardon the pun, the magic and the miracles out of everyday life. I mean, the fact that we even exist, much less that, like, as this expansion and spread of awareness happens, they showed me like a string of lights. Like you activate one person and it's like a string of lights, right? With these codes and things. And so, the more we do that, and see the miracles, the the fact that, like, we can be these multidimensional beings, and that I feel like, how they've shown me is like we're reactivating what we call the junk DNA, which would be the Sasquatch probably DNA. I wasn't given this understanding till recently about what that DNA was. They just told me it isn't junk DNA, and that I was realigning and reactivating it for people, right? And that was part of my purpose that I wanted to come back and do, so that they could become these and remember what they are. That's why I say remembrance guide, to be these multidimensional beings, because that was our natural evolution, like I said. And in order to care for the planet, be one with the planet, it has all these different frequencies of realities, and to be able to heal it and everything, you have to be able to move through those energies, those dimensions, those things, in order to have this symbiosis. At least that's what they're telling me as I'm speaking, so bear
Mm.
with me. So that is the purpose, that they're saying to me right now, of why it's so important to remember who you are, so that you are this divine conduit, that you're because even some of modern spirituality is always like ground, 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 stick all your negative bleh into the earth. Well, where does it go from there? Are you helping transmute it?
Mm.
Where's it go? They tell me to be this divine conduit, as in you always need to pull that energy from source. Your soul, okay, is your energy, that sun, that internal. They show it to me as the divine portal right below your journal notch there. It's right below the heart chakra. It's this divine portal. Sometimes I see, when I work with people, like galaxies, star systems, nebulas. It just depends, like where they're from or what it is. But so my understanding is that some people have become disconnected from their source,
Mm.
as in they're galactic, they're projecting here from their home planet. So they start to, what you would call, take energy from their environment or others around them, just to sustain their operating systems, is what you would call it, right? So another thing I do is, like, if they have a galactic origin, is to reconnect that. So they are drawing from their power system.
Mm.
Ours is, part of source. So if a lot of times what happens is we try to pull it from our cellular energy, and we're like shorting out. That's another reason with the dis-ease, right?
Mm.
Is we're not drawing off our source energy, we're drawing off of our bodies. And so we're not energizing properly. So what they show me is that, envision that light of source. Like for me, it's easier because I was with source in my first NDE, but it's like this brilliant amber to orange to, it's just this beautiful white light that's all encompassing warmth, peace, and love, right? So if I put myself into that frame, that's the easiest way for me to pull it, is to visualize it. Think of a parental love, or how you see when you see a kitten, whatever brings that kind of love to you. But that's a good way to get in the practice of just pulling love into yourself, because as a core, that's the soul light, right? But anyway, and then being that circuit where you're connecting to the core of the energy of Mother Earth,
Mm.
and just, where you're pulling it in a complete cycle. Because if you're pulling from one, then, you're going to short out this way. You're going from the other, you're only grounded, but you're not connected to source, then you're drawing from your body's energy. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
they tell me very much that we have disconnected, because of our inability to process emotions. Like, we've forgotten to transmute it back to this love. And the easiest way to train your mind to do that is the direct opposite of every emotion. Um, what is the opposite? So, um, love might be fear or hate. So if you're in fear, what is there to be grateful for? What is there to find love for? Look for something that is the opposite.
Mm.
Focus on that. Look at emotions, don't attach, but release. Find forgiveness that you felt that way. Because often we feel like we have to forgive someone else for something they did. Forgiveness is, I know it sounds egocentric, but is for yourself. It's not forgiving the behaviors, only if you keep that person around and let them continue to treat you that without keeping your energetic boundaries. But it's the forgiveness of yourself for forgetting and not knowing better, or um, for not setting that boundary in the first place. Like, you knew better. So often we know better. I do this a lot. Like, I always, because I see people's wounds and I see their whole 360 thing, the role they're playing versus the spirit that they are. I'll often let these things happen that I should have put up an energetic boundary Because I'm like, oh, but they're only doing it because of this. But you still have to hold that boundary because this is your energetic being. This is your vessel, and decide how you want to treat this vessel. They always tell me the divine, the temple is within you,
Mm.
and you have to find that divine connection. You have to go through within, without, right? Everything that you are within and reflects without because of the fact that you're the one creating it. So if you're unhealed, what your experience is unhealed. And that's kind of what my 2019 experience was about. Like
Mm.
all these things I attached to, all these traumas, all these things. It was just creating chaos within the world that I was creating.
Wow. No, thank you for sharing. So you think that would be the message, that would be the main message to give people going forward, like everything is within, right? Like we're able to fix everything, really. That, like,
Really?
what do you think the main message is that they're giving you to give humanity? Does that, like, I know you probably already mentioned it, but just
Yeah. Well, besides being that complete conduit and opening your light channel in that way, it's just the ability to be open-minded and mindful, you know. Um, Words carry energy and codes. So be
mm.
mindful how you use them. Like I don't say good morning because if you look at the root of mourning, it's to mourn. I'm not going to mourn the
Oh,
day. Okay. Just, and I'm not
wow.
saying, yeah, I'm not,
Right.
there's so much context in the conditioning of the words and the different things that we use in society that we don't even realize what we say anymore. If you look at words like, oh, I'm going to hit that, they're always like, why would you hit something? Or
Mm.
I'm going to do this, like we have a very demonstrative, negative thing, even for positive stuff, you know? Um, so, it's just being mindful of how you use your words and especially how you talk to your body and other people.
Mm.
Like some people with very strong energy, your words hit like a slap. That's why I always say like words stick with you and program you. I rather be physically slapped than repeatedly called something or talk derogatory too, because that's a conditioning and it becomes part of your program if you don't hold that energetic boundary. Like if somebody calls you fat for 5 years straight, you're gonna be, I must be fat. Why am I hearing fat everywhere? Because then once you hear it, take it into yourself and you hear and see it everywhere. And
Mm.
that's the same for positive or negative. So what do you want your reality to look like? Like whether or not what I say resonates with you, I only speak love. Okay. I just want people to love themselves. And I don't think love has ever hurt anyone in the sense of the divine, what we call pure love. The human um, perception of love, it's like, I love you, but I hurt you. So love means hurt. You know what I mean? And that's not the love I'm speaking of. you know um so because most people are like, well, love's done nothing but hurt me, um but that's where that accountability and responsibility needs to come into play, because one of the other things they preach on is the expectations and the titles we give people. Like, okay, if somebody's your mother or your friend, you expect them to behave a certain way.
Mm.
Even though they're human and they have their own needs and wants. Mom must give you this, mom must take care of you, your husband is supposed to nurture and provide. Like we have all these ideals and constructs that we built people into boxes that they feel trapped in. So many people are unhappy because they take on those roles, they claim them for themselves, like I'm supposed to behave this way, this is the way society sees I'm supposed to behave, but they have completely lost their joy.
Mm.
And energetically they've shown me and pulled me out of body how we keep pulling people into these roles. And like even your expectation of how you expect somebody to behave, maybe they were mean to you once, so from now on I won't even say the names that they, people say, like she's a real just because once she didn't agree with you.
Mm.
And you're going to judge her whole character because of that one behavior one time, and maybe you were in the wrong but you're not taking accountability, right? So every time you see her, everything that person could say is going to come through that filter, because you're no longer seeing that person from a place of love. You're expecting this and you will get it because you are that powerful. People, I don't have no, you are that powerful. Just trust me on this. So if you believe someone is going to act XYZ to you, they are going to. And that's just a given. And they pulled me out of body to show me like how my daughter expected me to behave this way. And it was like my body was on autopilot. I played the role she wanted me to play,
Mm.
you know, and how I reacted. I didn't feel that. I wasn't upset. Why would I do it? You know, but I did. And they also showed me this in the sense of, you know, my accountability and responsibility with that, like how I was seeing my husband because of past things. So the minute I let go of that, it was almost like he changed instantly. And it was like, is this my husband? You know, if you meet people from a place of love, every time you meet them, your world will change. But if you're carrying around a perception or even a perception that everybody hurts me, somebody hurt me once, so you're going to hurt me too. We have to heal these traumas. That's what gets rid of the chaos.
I love it. That was such a powerful message. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. That one flowed through. So that's from them to you.
No, absolutely. No, that made perfect sense. I got it. I got it. I've definitely had, you know, it's weird because my brain will argue that I generally don't put labels on people. That's why. I expect, see, if anything, I expect, but see, there you go. I expect like the best, and I'll tolerate a lot instead of cutting. So that's my thing. I'll let it get to the point where I'm like, man, this person is never gonna change. But it'll take way too long where I should have just cut it and allowed for, I don't know, like maybe cut it and allow that, or just there, like that was it for that experience. Like there, just let it. But see, then I don't know that.
Yeah, that's the energetic boundary because, you know, they're not in a place of healing. What I mean by like sending love is like, you know, that they have these traumas and where that lens is from. So why initiate? Why give your energy to it? Why attach to their behavior? It's not about you. You're taking it personal. Rather than detaching, you let it affect your mood. That's the other aspect of it. Like if this person's you notice how like one person in your household wakes up all crotchety, they trigger the next person. I was having a good mood till I heard that, you know, and then because like if I'm in a bad mood, my whole house just goes, you know, it's like, and it's rare that it happens, but yeah, you know, but I've seen it in many other ways, you know, so that's what I'm saying. The accountability for your own energy and your own interaction. You can give love even if love is not being returned. And that doesn't mean keep putting yourself or your energy at it. It means don't attach to it. It is never about you. You know, people are reflecting. It's a mirror verse. So they're reflecting their inner hurt at you in some way, somehow. You might have something they think that they're not worthy of. You might be doing something that they know they should have done, but they didn't. They didn't make that choice, so they're envious. Whatever it is, if they're reacting badly to you, it's about their own state of consciousness and self-worth and self-love. And that's why I guess I push, you know, that self-healing and self-love, because once you love yourself, you can't represent anything but love in the world. But in order to love yourself, you have to look at that accountability and responsibility. It's not easy. You know, there's a lot of people that like to make the whole spiritual path sunshine, rainbows, and glitter farting unicorns, but it's not. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of ugly crying, a lot of late nights and dark nights of the soul where you're looking at yourself going, oh, wow. I still have those moments like, ew, I was that person. Why was I being, you know, like throughout my life, like I was like, oh, I can see why they saw this. And I can see why I reacted that way. So maybe by being this way, that's just how they were reading it from their own state of consciousness, you know? And so I have to accept that that's just how the lens that they saw me in. So that is their reality. The respecting that sovereignty, that's their creation. And also, you know, especially with family dynamics, okay? They're never going to change. In their state of recorded memory, you're still that 5-year-old that got everything mommy and daddy, you know, wanted to give you because they could then that the other sibling maybe didn't get, right? Or things like that. You're still that person in their memory. That's their recorded version of you. It's very, very unlikely from what I have seen that that's ever going to change. So why do you keep trying? Why do you feed energy? Why do you want that validation? Why do you want that love? You didn't get it then. Why are you still looking for it now? Love yourself. You have all the love that you need within yourself. It doesn't have to come from an external course, but we're so taught your family should be loving. You should have this nurturing. We all didn't get that nurturing. Not everybody did. And I think at some level, even when we feel, even as a parent, that we gave it, my kids are like, you were emotionally unavailable. I'm like, what? I was there every day. I spent all my time with you, like, but to their aspect, maybe you didn't give enough. Everybody has a different level that they need. But that's still not your responsibility. Don't take it on like you were a terrible parent. You did the best you can. You're human. I think it isn't until like we're 30, 35 that we realize our parents were human. Holy crap.
Oh
You know,
yeah,
all
absolutely.
that
No,
state of consciousness,
yeah,
you know. So, because there's a lot of parents that carry guilt, and there's a lot of children that say their parents were terrible when, all of those things, these levels of healing really need to happen within you because your world, your lens of the world is created by how much you are willing to heal.
absolutely. No, no, thank you. That's a powerful message. Yeah. I mean, I don't even want to ruin it with saying anything else after that. But so I guess in closing, because I feel like I think we've shared enough that we can close it. But do you want to say anything else before we do? And also where people can find your, like, where you provide the healing and all that, if people want to contact you to get healing. And you said you already started a community as well, right?
Right. Yeah. I have the Spirit Insight community. It's the celebration of consciousness.
Hmm.
We have a sharing group every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Central, 8 Eastern, where we talk about the multiverse, everything. Like, to me, it's all part of this whole um, multidimensional existence. So we talk about everything from, the galactics, the elementals, the celestials, the Sasquatch, NDEs, STEs, anything that comes through. A lot of us are psychic intuitive mediums, so we'll practice with that, or we get messages while we're all together. So and it's interesting because, about that is like we each fill in the puzzle pieces, or like if somebody's not quite getting this, they're like, I get this, what do you think? And we're able to validate each other. And it's such, and I've had so many people comment that, there's just so much love energy within that. I'm very blessed by it. And we hold a once a month event called the Celebration of Consciousness at 11 a.m. on the first Sunday of the month. And that's central, where we have like 4 or 5 different speakers, usually someone that tells their experiences like these, and then other people that teach different things, like sometimes it's mediumship, like this month is soul retrieval, and then we usually have somebody that does a guided meditation. Like this month is between lives regression,
Oh,
and it's all free. This is our way of giving back for what we do and the abilities that we were given. And so yeah, it's a 2-hour event. But yeah, that's the community stuff that I do. And I have an NDE group called Crossing Over as well. But and I have the IN Central Missouri group. I'm all over doing different things. But yeah, I have a healing practice called Healing Through Remembrance. And that's on Calendly. I mean, that you can find it, but I do have a link tree I can give you that has all the group links and all the other links, if you're willing to put that with this video.
absolutely.
So they can find all the different things if they're interested. It's all on there.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. No,
But thank you for that opportunity, because sometimes people want to connect with you and they don't know where. And it's always nice to have that. So, and I'm always willing to talk to people. That's what I'm here for.
absolutely. I've been surprised where I mean, maybe that's why. Like, I've seen where someone interviewed someone and they
Mm.
won't have any of their links, and maybe it's that, so they're like, I figure it's because they don't want someone else to interview them or something like that.
Could
But
be. I'm not sure.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's just, but yeah, I always, of course, like, why wouldn't I put people's links? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. So it's funny, but yeah, definitely, I'll put the link tree. Any links that you want me to put, and let me see what else. What else? I think. Oh, go ahead,
Yeah.
please go.
Yeah. And the one thing you said, like, that I'd want to leave people with also is that I keep getting it, and I've had other people say it, 2024 to 2027 is going to be quite a bit of change and expansion, easier from some than others, but
Mm.
just to be aware, like I told you, the spirit keeps telling me, it's a living life review. That's what we're going through right now, to get rid of that, to step into these energies. And I guess patience and compassion for yourself, and know you're not going crazy. There's going to be a lot of people questioning themselves, because a lot of, I think, timelines, what people would call past life, are bleeding through a lot now as well. And, just I encourage you to reach out to find communities that resonate with you. I'm very involved in um, quite a few spiritual communities internationally and stuff, and happy to plug them. But but anyway, but that, and my own, but find a place that resonates, that you can speak your truth, because that is a huge part of the healing process, is to be able to talk about all these things authentically. Because every person I've talked to, either publicly, privately, or whatever, when they get talking, I find they've had these experiences. They just don't want to put themselves out there. And even ones that may have had it will deny it to you, just because they're afraid of their own. And letting go of that fear is so important. And one other quick thing that, I told you prior to recording, that I just had another near-death-like experience
Mm.
on the 19th, which is my spiritual number.
Wow.
But one thing they wanted me to take away from that is, which seems like really odd to say, we fear death, so we create death. Because I stayed calm, and because of my fourth death experience of knowing how to restart my body, I was able to return. And it's my vehicle for as long as I want to use it. But, if I was raised with the fact that I could die, things would be a lot different, if that makes sense. But I had my NDE so young, I knew that, yeah, that there didn't have to be a death. And many medical intuitives have healed themselves from major things, or returned from NDEs with, healed. Like, I didn't have any water in my lungs. I should have. I should have had various brain damages from my other NDEs. I did not.
Mm.
And I'm not saying, what I've found is there are some that we have chosen to experience health issues, but I had an experience with Archangel Michael, and this is the last thing I want to leave you with, because I think it pertains more than just to health. I was having this major health surge of something that I thought I healed many moons ago, so I was very frustrated. And I'm like, if you want me to be of service, you need to help me heal, or get me the heck out of here. But I didn't say it as nicely, right? And he pulled me, and he's like, I cannot remove something you've already pulled into your experience. The only thing I can do is help remove your attachment, so it moves through your experience faster.
Mm.
It was the hugest aha, and then this whole remembrance came with it. Because the more I feared it, the more I attached to it, the more I tried to treat it, the more I was claiming it for my experience. Instead of just like, oh, that's that, I can let that go. Or what's it trying to show me? I always ask your body, what's it trying to show you? Because everything starts in the energetics and these light bodies in the quantum space. And you can create it there and pull it here. So he was reminding me, it was my accountability, because I pulled it in, because I didn't want to deal with something.
Yeah.
Often we create illness when we don't want to step forward into our purpose, or we're not dealing with something that's going on in our life because we don't want to look at it. And we create this illness. Look at me, I can't do it because of this and this and this.
Yeah.
So, that was a huge reminder for me that, so anytime pain has come into my life since, or other things, I'm like, okay, how much am I going to feed this? Because right away, it's like, oh my God, I don't want to experience this. Can we get all fearful? I don't want to be in pain. But the body's only way to communicate with you is pain or anxiety. If you're not listening to something, if you're not taking care of something, if you're not dealing with an emotion, that's the only way it has to speak with you.
Mm.
So ask it, what are you trying to show me? And when you let go of those things, you'll find it leaves you. And that's the last thing. And thank you for letting me add that on.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. Like, there were just so many things you said that I related to, and I have like similar stories, but I know we would make this interview like 2 hours long.
All
So,
right.
I don't want to do that to the viewers. I'm sure eventually, like I mentioned to you, I've done one interview, and eventually, I'm sure when people ask me to do interviews, I'll share more of my story. But, I'll just say that at least that I could vouch like with my own experiences that so many things that you said, right? Like the one of Bigfoot I shared, right? That would seem so
Right.
out there to some people, but hey, I wanted to validate that as well. So, if
Mhm.
anyone, looks at you like you're crazy, well, hey, I'm
Well, and that's where the authenticity came from, because one of the things in my band quantum hypnosis was, speak more, talk less.
Mm.
Stop filtering it, by your audience. These are the truths. Yeah, some people won't resonate with it. 10 years ago, I wouldn't have either. I would have told, if you would have told me Sasquatch this and I was a hybrid, or I would have been, but as we attain these levels of consciousness and remembrance, it's not.
Yeah.
But people are never going to get there if we're hiding this information, if we're gatekeeping, they call it, or I do, so we have to be authentic in our experiences. We're only holding back the collective consciousness if we don't.
Absolutely. No, no. And that's why, see, at least I was doing it through songs already. Like, there's a song like from 2010 where I mentioned being like a medium, and I worked it
Right.
into like this hip hop song, but like, anyone listening to it probably just thought like, oh, I'm just using some kind of method. But I was really like, so there were times where at least with music, the filter would be off, right? I
Yep.
would be able to I would be talking about visions I had. There was even this old song I did about like, I didn't know how to express it. I saw a war, and that was, of course, people don't, that it's scary, but I had the vision. So how do I transmute that energy to not hold it in my head and just be fearful, like, oh, one day there's gonna be this war? But it was almost like a warning. We don't have to get to that. That was what I was trying.
Exactly. That's
We
what they
don't
showed
have,
me.
knowing that I'm seeing this, and I have premonitions, and I'm seeing, and they tend to be pretty much accurate. I'm trying to warn people, like, do you really want that clash? Like I didn't know how to express it, but at least I try to put it in words. If I was a director, or back then I was, pretty young. So if I had the money to make a whole movie, but even
No, right.
movies though, that's why it's funny. Even movies with all the graphic stuff they show in movies, that still doesn't work. That still doesn't make people's stomachs turn and be like, oh, I don't want that. Like look at right now what was happening with all this, and people like, it made them more toxic. Like I've seen comments of people like, yeah, I'm glad. Like I've just seen horrific things and where people are
Well, it's
taking a
going to
side.
take a lot of that, unfortunately. I mean, like upheavals in
Yeah.
order to get to the place or where they've had enough. Like I say as a healer, I'm not going to give you an energetic band-aid. You have to do the work,
Mm,
right? Um, because I could do this energy stuff or psychic surgery or whatever and heal us for a time being, but you're only going to recreate it because that's your energetic frequency pattern, how you cope with things. You're just going to recreate it 5 years, 10 years down the road, whatever, even a month. So I have to teach you how to get to the core of those things. Well, it's the same thing with society. You can't throw band-aids at it. They are going to have, as a collective, a dark night of the soul, whatever that means, losing everything, whatever, or their perception of reality, or whatever. Like, this awareness is going to give them a different perception of their reality to where they have to make these different choices.
mm,
And that's not going to be comfortable for a lot of people,
yeah.
but it's a necessary in their evolution, of consciousness. But so, that's the other thing of, things we deem or judge or label bad, good, in the spirit world, it's like the greatest good for all. It may actually be a very divine intervention. Like, yes, I had a lot of trauma, but if I hadn't, I wouldn't be the healer I am today because they showed me I wouldn't know those frequencies to reach the people going through it if I
Mm,
hadn't been through it first. How am I going to know what that feels like? How am I going to meet them in that quantum space to pull them and show them the way out of it if I've never experienced it myself?
absolutely. And that's so funny because, you know, I'm no saint, absolutely. Like and I can't
Yeah.
hide it because I have songs where I channeled all that anger and this and that. And even after I started trying, to change and this and that, like that was the message that was clear to me. It was like that, though, even though that's gonna reach somebody that's on that frequency, and then you're gonna pull them, because that's what happened to me. And then it made perfect sense. Like even, one of my favorite artists was like Tupac. You know who Tupac was, right? Yeah. And he had these songs, and that's after what what I would listen to more. He had these songs about changing the world and this and that and that and this. But what drew me at first was his thug life songs about this, because that's what I was going through. Since I would get bullied and this and that and picked on, that was helping me find courage, right? Like here's this guy, he had courage. He never got into a gang. He was kind of like someone on his own. And the same, when I was growing up, gangs didn't make sense to me, but I was surrounded by them. So like, how do you survive? Can you survive on your own? He was showing me that you could, right? Like, oh, he was this guy. He just was like thug life. That was the thing. He didn't he didn't. So I took on a lot of things like the way like he did, and then after that, like then he had all this knowledge. He was so knowledgeable. And he credited his mom. So I credit a lot of things from my life. He was taught by his mom. So it was like, so technically his mom taught me too, right? Like his mom taught him, and then he taught people like me, and then but it really came, so it's just an amazing thing. So anyways, they just told me with my songs, I wasn't supposed to have a filter, even though sometimes like I can't even listen to someone because I'm like, man, I was cussing so much. I said so much things like, geez. Like,
and I have to laugh about, that's funny about you talk about cussing, because I don't like cussing, but it's really funny. And I don't know if it's just an aspect of me that I get when I get hyper spiritual and frustrated about things. I talk in this weird voice and it swears a lot.
oh, wow. Man.
And not and that rarely happens, but I always laugh. It's so funny that that's another thing we judge on, like the language or even the humor, because like Yeshua has a lot of humor, and so did the Fae. The Fae love messing with me and hiding things, and I'll have to give it back, and it'll just show up in the middle of the room, like and they tell me they do it, or they told my daughter, I think it was, because I was taking something too serious. And sometimes it, like when you lose your keys or your glasses, that they will move them, like because they, sometimes it's a protection. Like if I would,
yes,
like
absolutely.
5 minutes, if I would have left 5 minutes earlier, I'll see this accident. That could have been me. I get it, So, that's where I always say, trust the divine plan. Like if I can't find something, or I don't feel I'm supposed to go out that day, don't. The hugest thing is to follow your internal intuition. I always call it the divine GPS.
No, absolutely. No, and it's funny you mentioned, because I'll just share this real quick. Like one of my first things that when I had like this kind of vision, who knows, maybe I was 18 or so driving on the freeway, and there was this huge, like, those diesel, or the semi trucks that carry two big old tankers of gas.
Oh, the tankards, yeah.
Yeah, so I was driving behind it, but in the other lane, and I don't know, I was gonna go push through it. Oh no, I think right next to it, and then I was going. All of a sudden, I saw it in my mind's eye, like if it hit me or something, and then so I slowed down, and I was like, I was like, I'm stupid, like what? Oh, okay, whatever. And then like 30 seconds later, as I was already getting ready, okay, I guess I'm just gonna push through. All of a sudden, it hits like a bump in the road, and it went all the way into. Yeah, so that would have been my little car would have boom, like so I was like, oh. Yeah, but I was like, okay, did that really happen? You still doubt it, right? Like I was doubting it. I was like, okay, like I know, but maybe it was just the logical thing, right? Like you're next to it, and maybe I was just like, yeah, this is possible. So you start trying to make things, but that was obviously something warning me. And I've had the same, like how you said about losing your keys. You can't, and then you go and you see an accident, and you're like, wait a sec. Like that would have probably been me or something like that.
Right.
So.
And they're always back where you put them when it's time for you to leave. Like you might have checked there 5 times, and it'll just be sitting there blank on a table. Like my glasses, they like to do that to me. All of a sudden it'll just be sitting there where like 5 of us have checked. Or in the middle of the road. Like for the longest time, I was losing a bunch of metal, different things in my rings. And I'm like, okay, I know I didn't lose these. I know I didn't misplace those. Give them back to me. The next morning I wake and literally there was this whole pile of them under my, my bedside table. It's like,
Wow.
because it was open, so underneath of it, they set it all back in a little pile. I was like, thanks.
Yeah, yeah,
But
absolutely.
and you get to a point where you don't doubt this stuff because I mean, like it happens in your reality so much, and it's so funny because even though these things still happen to me, like even with this like thing that happened with me Tuesday, where I went to the black void, I still get emotional or still when things happen in like the 3D reality, like I'm so used to being out of body, but when it actually happens in my 3D physical presence, I still sometimes freak out or get emotional, not just like, oh my God, that did happen.
Mm.
Like this reality is really that malleable. So I get it when people question these things. Of course I do. It's the natural human reaction, but it's like it happens so often now that I'm like, yeah, okay, just give it back. I don't have time for
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely.
But I never want to lose the magic. Like, don't lose the magic because that is still miraculous that these little things that we're so multidimensional. I've had experiences. Oh, that was the other thing they keep wanting me to say, and I know we're going long. Is what you were talking about? Like spirits and ghosts and things. I always joke because of being multidimensional and knowing the things I've done. I always say we're all ghosting each other's timelines.
Oh,
People be like, who moved this? Who did that? And I have found, and they've shown me that often it's me doing it to myself, like backwards, forwards, different things. And like my parents thought our house was haunted, like this ghost was doing things with the doll clothes and different things. But they showed me it was me, because I wouldn't be able to play and grow up with my sisters because they're 12 years older than me. So I was visiting and playing with them.
mm.
So like I always laugh about being that multidimensional. We just don't remember it. I mean, we're starting to, some of us, but you know. So I just the biggest thing I can say is if you want to expand and experience these things, to let go of that fear.
No, absolutely. Well, you know what? Like, since you mentioned that, okay, so like that was one of the things when it started happening to me. I would be visited by this ancient being, and to me, I thought it was like God, right? But then as I got older, I started thinking, what if that was me? And I think Interstellar, even when that came out, have you ever seen the movie Interstellar?
Not sure.
Well,
I
it ends up being something like that. Like it's like the daughter has a ghost, and she says the ghost is giving her messages, and like so through the movie this and that, and then in the future it's like the earth is kind of dying, and not to ruin the movie, I don't know if you're gonna watch it or not, but so in the future it ends up being like it was the dad way in the future ended up like, well, not way in the future, but he ended up being in this thing outside of time, and he was he was his daughter's ghost that was, and he was trying to send her messages to basically because she was gonna save the planet. So it was something like that. And so this being that would appear to me, I was always wondering who this ancient being was. And then even that I started thinking, because now that's kind of what I'm getting, these messages of me being this ancient being.
yeah.
And so I'm like, was that me all along? Like
Mhm.
coming back to tell like the other, like who is this ancient being? So I guess I feel like that's, but it's so weird,
Mhm.
like us appearing to ourselves.
Right.
Wow,
Well,
that's crazy.
and they always tell me my guides are just other aspects, other lives of myself.
Mm.
So I understand that even like my first death experience, that was the totality of my oversoul I was experiencing from what they told me. Like that is me. I'm a fractal of that, and I have things to do and all these things. So I understand those things, but it really does. It's even hard for my mind to like go around all that, like how there is no space or time, and I'm messing with myself, and I'm doing these things, and like I've even had it validated by running into other people through portals and different things. Like I'm collecting things for a future that I don't have things in, and just all these really weird things that like sound so. And they always say you're not crazy if you think you sound crazy.
Ah, wow.
Yeah, but if I hadn't experienced it or had it validated by other people I ran into in the quantum that I know in this time, you know, I would wonder too, but I started to put all the pieces together of these different things. And I get that's why people journal, but it's really interesting because we just credit and write off so much about our experiences. Oh, that's astral, that's dreams, that's this, that's that. But through feeling the energy and different things, you can really tell the difference. Like I've had experiences where my consciousness was going into, people compare it to Robert Monroe, but I haven't read his work, where my consciousness was going into other aspects or other people that had open consciousness to either experience, alter different decisions, different things. My daughter's experienced that too, because I think we're fluid through all of our aspects and we're constantly trying to move each of us forward.
That makes sense. That actually made a lot of sense. Because even that, right? Like when I first realized I could also dream backwards, because one day I had a dream and, I showed up to work and, my job, it's like a day-to-day basis. So you never know who you're going to run into.
Right.
So I didn't know I was going to run into this person. And this was someone that I had never talked about anything spiritual with. I don't believe at all. But I knew them. And so like barely, right? And so all of a sudden I just opened up to him. I'm like, sharing, I had the craziest dream. Da, 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 da. And then they look at me and they're like, what? You just said word for word what happened to me 3 years ago. And I was
I've
like,
done that. Yes,
yeah.
I've done that. Or they come back later and I'm like, oh yeah, I dreamed that 4 months ago. I remember when that. I know what you're talking about.
Wow, yeah. So that means I was seeing it through his. That means I hopped into his. Yeah. So that's amazing. And I even had an experience where I was with a friend and all this stuff was happening. And then maybe a couple months later, he was telling me a story, but in the dream, I was him and he was me. So I was like, wow, again, I was seeing it like through his eyes.
Yeah, like you do in a life review. It's like a look at it. Where you're seeing and experiencing it through the other person's eyes. Yeah. Yeah, and part of my understanding was, some of this stuff that I was doing was, like, how we say corrupted, right? Well, like fixing timelines, and refixing the frequencies of where like they were supposed to progress to, and just thinking things like that. And I don't know, I'm not claiming that it's everybody's truth because we are here having different purposes and different experiences, and we come from a collection of different abilities and different races and different things as a state of consciousness. So, but these are the things that, that are available to us anyway, or that can happen. And I think it's good for people to understand, even if they're not having these experiences, because maybe a loved one is. So, but the thing I've understood as a collective, like the more you know, the more you collect, and the more you sit in those frequencies, the more experiences you're going to have. But within that, I always say, careful what you wish for. Universe is like the Dijin, you gotta kind of watch what you want to. Like when I asked for healing, I didn't know they would bombard me with everything I ever needed to heal. Okay, so I'm just saying.
No, I saw that early on. What with this scar, right? Like the scar.
Yeah.
I don't know. Have you ever seen the movie Scarface?
Oh,
with Al Pacino.
The mobster.
Yeah. So he had this scar, and he says this thing. I don't want to say it because it's vulgar, right? But he says this thing in the movie. He goes, like, how I get a scar? Like, oh, because someone tells him, oh, how'd you get that scar, tough guy? Like, and they tell him something. And he's like, how I get a scar like this from whatever, right? Like, and then, so I always used to look in the mirror and say that, like at 15 years old or whatever, and then I was like, because I was like, oh, that looks cool, right? Like he was like this mob figure, like tough guy, right? Because, that's what happens. See, when you're bullied and everything, you're looking at those figures like the tough guy that no one messes with them kind of thing. And they didn't start off like that, but they turned into that, right? They got all the respect, all the everything. So that's what you're aiming to be. But yeah, be careful what you wish for. Then I remember being self-conscious in high school. Like people would be, oh, the guy with the scar. I would hear him, and I would be like, oh, like I would always out in public when I wasn't at school. I'd always be wearing beanies or hats or stuff because, you know, I was young. I was 16 years old. Like, so, you know, I just got really self-conscious about it. So it was funny, but yeah, be careful what you wish for. I got that early on, and it's the truest.
Yeah, I know another thing, and I think you know Jelani, and he reminded me of that. So I remember at speaking at the IANS conference, and
Oh,
I was like, yeah, I kept saying, don't give me this, you know, I just need to get through this week, you know, and so literally the day I left the conference is when I lost my voice. He's
wow.
like, I did that. He goes, and he warned me before that because he was like, you know, don't tell it can come later because it will. You know, like don't say I just need to get through this. Then he can, you know, he's like, because it will. Just say you don't want to experience it at all. You know, because sometimes we totally forget. That's just how we talk or think. Like I can't do this right now, but I can deal with it later. You know, it's like no, no, no. And so I had to laugh because it was spot on. You know, um, but yeah, there's always like I said, a blessing and maybe a not so blessed aspect of, because in my fourth death experience they literally said at your level of light you have to watch your words.
Oh,
So
wow.
because the higher frequency you are, the faster it's created.
Mm.
And it became very, very apparent with a bunch of things that manifested super fast, that I literally just said to my family, to the point they're like, you need to watch yourself. Because it was that
Wow.
obvious, like things showing up at her door and just all these different things that I just said, like, I want this, and it just appear at my door, you know, like just, you know, weird things like that. So, you know, so being in that divine conscious flow is a lot of responsibility. And that's why they tell me that the earth has the density it does, because think about it. If you had all these creators, what they call celestial beings here, unaware of what they are and what they create, and they had full free reign to do that, it would look like literally the void of creation, because everything would be going on and you didn't know what the hell is going on. It'd be utter chaos. You think this is chaos? Just imagine what we could do if things manifested instantly at the speed of thought. So this density is here for our protection. And as we learn to heal and choose love, then we're able to create more because we won't create destruction. That makes sense. Yeah. So
No, no, no. I mean, I've experienced that where I've asked for something and instantly. So,
yep.
and you know what? It's funny because recently, well, not recently, but a few months back, I went through something like that. And I think that's what you actually just gave me, like the light bulb moment. I think that's what they were trying to show me, because I did something and it caused all this chaos. So, like, I think they were trying to warn me, beware, like kind of something similar. Like, hey,
Mhm.
beware, because someone even in the dream, they were like, what did you do? And I was like, I didn't care. I was like, nothing. Like, well, you shouldn't have made me mad.
Right? You sound like a
Yeah. So no, that's
no,
yeah.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, because I had created literally my fourth death experience because I joked about something about ways to die. Yeah, it was fun.
Oh, wow. Wow.
They're like, your level of light, you cannot do this. I'm like, ooh.
No, thank you. I feel like I needed to hear that. So thank you for sharing that. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
you are so welcome.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
you know, these things are just, you know, there's certain parameters of how the program works that I feel people need to hear about. So I'm glad we were able to discuss all of this today.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. It's been an honor. I'm actually, you know, I knew like something told me like I was gonna interview you. I think from before, but I don't know. I guess it just we never got to. And then finally, because yeah, something had told me to message you since before, and then I was like, I'll just wait. And then after, or I was just like, okay, let me just go ahead and
Always divine timing, right?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. So thank you so much. No, it's been
You're
great.
welcome.
And yeah, and I just want to tell you one thing after we go. So I'm gonna end it right here for
Okay.
everybody. and then just something real quick. So thank you everybody for tuning in. I'm gonna put all of Loreli's links in the description so you could connect with her. You know, I'm so grateful. It was an amazing conversation. It turned out to be, you know, at first it was just okay, let's just do the interview, and then you know, it ended up being a conversation after all. So I was
Yeah.
grateful to have it. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for allowing me to have a conversation. You know, it's the things we take away sometimes from this experience that is far more important than hearing the experience, even though people love the detail.
Mm, absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you. And on that note, okay, everybody.
Life may move fast, or it may move slow. I met a silly man who said he make it slow. We look up out towards space, or even at the sky. One day pass away, but never look inside. Breathe in, breathe out. Life is a maze, but we'll figure this out. I mean, human beings, I ain't got no doubt.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, sometimes you just feeling it, you know what I'm saying? You just feeling it. And I wanna feel this way forever.